Okay, so today we're going to talk about the modern European lawn. And when I talk about modern European lawn, what I'm basically referring to is the development of lawns from the 1700s on in Europe. So in Europe in the 1700s, most of this development took place in England, with gardens, lawns being a focus, with grasses being the predominant group of plants that is found there. There's one particular individual during the 1700s that had a great impact on the development of lawns and gardens in England, and that was Lancelot Capability Brown. He was a landscape architect during this time and was predominantly involved in the great houses movement. And if you go online and look up the great houses, you'll find these houses that were giant, large country homes of the very wealthy and gentry landowners of England. And the primary mindset behind Capability Brown's idea were these great vistas, these large, expansive areas that an owner could look across and enjoy the view. He was known for naturalistic designs with a lawn of grasses primarily close to the home, and then a meadow of trees, lakes, and open grassland farther from the home that allowed for grazing animals and so on, but allowed this great vista to be viewed from the home. These areas were grazed by sheep, and that was generally to maintain a low height, but also for livestock production, for the production of mutton and lamb for use as food. He was also instrumental in the development of parks, and then cemeteries also adopted some of these features, where most of the areas were grass areas for use as recreation in the case of parks, and then also between plots of people that were buried in cemeteries so that folks could walk and find their loved ones and remember them and so on. In 1760, a really important development in terms of the history of the world begins. The Industrial Revolution starts right around 1760. And the Industrial Revolution was critically important to the development and use of turf grasses, predominantly because there was a move of folks towards cities, away from agricultural-based industry. There was the development of a middle class, because as machines and the Industrial Revolution really took hold, work was then multiplied and workers had more recreational time, but also gained more money, and that increase in wealth as well as increase in free time allowed time for recreation. And so this period of time from the 1760s into the 1800s was really transformative in terms of society. And that transformation in society had an impact on what people did with their free time, and a lot of that free time was spent trying to duplicate what the wealthy had, which was lawns and gardens and expansive areas of grasses to be maintained and to look nice for your neighbors and so on. Also during this time, in the early 1700s, we see the first Japanese book on the planting and care of grasses published. This is in the early 1700s. And then in 1745, Miller's The Gardener's Calendar, with a K, was written. And this is the first time that we see lawn used to describe a grass area. This is where it's used predominantly as a grass area rather than an area of trees that we talked about before. Various authors also note that the importance of mowing, rolling, edging, weeding of grasses to obtain their highest quality. So in this mid-1700s period is where we first start to see the development of cultural practices used to maintain high-quality turf grass areas or lawn areas. John Evelyn's writings suggest a 15-day interval for mowings on regular periods for grass walks and bowling lawns. We also see him refer to the use of a turf beater in the wet season to smooth the area. So maybe it's not growing as much, but we still want to maintain it smooth, so we want to beat it down so that it lays flat and allows the ball to roll over it, if in the case of a bowling lawn. In the 1800s or the 19th century, the Industrial Revolution is well underway. It's really taking hold. We see widespread attention in various books giving to the maintenance and the development of what are called grass plats. These would be small grass areas in front of homes or in the back of homes for folks that are now in cities in the industrialized areas of the world. There's the discussion of using the scythe to remove grass clippings periodically. So now this is starting to become more widespread. The reel mower is developed in 1827 by Edwin Budding, and we'll talk more later when we talk about the development of the mower itself, but it's important to recognize that this is the period when this is all taking place. So folks are moving to cities, we're having parks develop, we're having small grass plats in front of homes and in the back of homes being developed for use and recreation and hobby, and the mowers are being developed so that those areas can be mown. Scythes and recommendations are being made by folks that know about growing plants and so on, about how to do that best to maintain high quality. So this is all taking place during the 1800s. So this is a real period of transformation in terms of how grasses are used, particularly in Europe, but this transmits or translates across the world to the U.S. as well as to other areas of the world. MacDonald's book, A Complete Dictionary of Practical Gardening, in 1807, discusses sodding as being preferred to seeding. And in class, we're going to talk about why that might be. What are the things that we would have to consider if we think about it in 1807 terms? Why would that be the desirable thing? Talks about September to April being the best time to establish lawns. Again, we're going to compare that to how lawns are established today and what those optimal time periods are. And then it discusses that a desirable lawn will have a prostrate growing, deep-rooted, heat-resistant species as the grass being grown. And that's in a lot of cases very similar to what we would desire today if we were thinking about grasses that we would want to have for a lawn. The first publication that is strictly devoted to turf grasses is published in 1892, towards the end of the century, and it's the formation of lawns, tennis, and cricket grounds from seed. And this publication is regularly updated for nearly 70 years after its first publication in 1892, which is a testament to the staying power of that information. But this is the first publication that specifically and solely talks about turf grasses and talks about their use from seed. So we have a change from the early 1800s to the late 1800s of desiring seed and being used, using seed to develop lawns and athletic grounds for their use. So again, the 1800s and then into the 1900s and the 20th century, this period of time is a huge transformation in Europe. Even though all of this happened, it still remains today even that most of the large expansive land areas are owned by the wealthy class in Europe, as opposed to the U.S., and we'll talk about this more when we talk about the development of the American lawn, where there's more of a middle class. Even the middle class that develops in Europe, not a lot of land holdings in open areas. So these grass areas tended to be very small grass plats near their home. And as those areas develop, there's been more areas that homeowners can have lawns and so on. But for the most part in Europe, if we were thinking about kind of one thing to keep in mind, is that this was really the playground of the wealthy and the well-to-do, the well-heeled, land-owning gentry class of society that was able to do all these things with the development of the lawn in Europe. All of these developments translate across the board to other societies, the U.S. being one, where this change in the lawn was then able to be used by the middle class to develop lawns and further practices as we move forward in time. And we'll be discussing that more in future lectures, but I just wanted to kind of point that out, that even as much as we've talked about here, we're still talking about the very wealthy being able to maintain lawns, not the general common person for the most part.